He entered the courtroom alone, no lawyers, no allies, carrying only the quiet strength of a man who had faced coups, corporations, and colonizers. But today, he faced a man in robes, gavel in one hand, arrogance in the other. Before Traoré could speak, the judge leaned forward, smirked, and snapped, "This isn't Africa, Mr. President. You command nothing here." Then louder for the cameras, "If you raise your voice again, I'll have you dragged out in chains, like the rest of your people." Traoré didn't blink. He stepped forward, placed a red folder on the bench, and calmly said, "Your robe may be clean, but your hands are not." The judge laughed, until Traoré opened the folder. The laughter died. "Your Honor," Traoré said, "these are your chains. You just haven't felt them tighten yet." What happened next, in just 9 minutes, ended with the judge in handcuffs and the world stunned. How did a quiet voice and a red folder bring down a man who believed he was untouchable? What did Traoré reveal that made the judge tremble? To understand, we must go back to where it began. That morning, the city awoke not with outrage, but with a smug excitement usually reserved for red carpets or public hangings. The marble steps of the federal courthouse were pressure-washed like a movie set, not for justice, but for live broadcasts. Inside, staff moved like stagehands, not to uphold the law, but to shape the optics. Justice wasn't blind here, she had a PR team. Velvet ropes were added. Bottled water was placed only on the judge's desk. Journalists rehearsed their serious voices. Everything gleamed, not for truth, but for headlines. A poster outside read, "Traoré on trial. The day Africa answers to the West." Beneath it, someone had scribbled, "The day the West answers to itself." Even the crowd was curated. Protesters held matching signs, most unaware of who Traoré was. They were handed signs, sandwiches, and NDAs. One man held his sign upside down, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about meaning. It was about image. There was no space for complexity, only spectacle. Those seeking fairness were turned away. Those craving scandal got front-row seats. Inside, silence was orchestrated like a symphony. Every reaction rehearsed. Every gasp accounted for. The only unscripted element was the man they all came to see fall. Judge Norman Whitaker entered like a stage actor, polished, precise, and smiling like a man who'd practiced in 3 mirrors. His robe flowed like velvet curtains, oversized for drama, perfectly hemmed to flare when he sat. He wasn't just a judge, he was a brand. A former TV legal analyst turned federal showman. His courtroom was his stage. The gavel, a gift from a donor, was engraved. Justice must be seen. And that was the point. For Whitaker, justice was about ratings. His Instagram bio read, "Gavel goals. Constitution in motion." His rulings came with TikToks. Staff catered to his vanity. Coffee with exactly 2 ice cubes, cushions fluffed not for comfort but for posture. Court reporters deleted his ad-libs from records, like when he called himself the people's conscience. The media loved him. He was clickable, quotable, predictable. Today, he planned to humiliate Traoré on cue. The cameras were ready. The script rehearsed. All that remained was the accused. Long before Traoré arrived, the verdict had been staged. Evidence chosen not for truth, but narrative. Undated photos, unsourced testimonies, decontextualized documents. 3 paid witnesses flown in under aliases. Enough similarity for credibility, enough confusion to blur the truth. Embargoed headlines were ready. Traoré's denial falls flat, a masterclass in Western justice. Even the court's social media had a pre-written post, Whitaker raising his gavel under the caption, "Order restored." What no one noticed or admitted was that the entire show was built on silence. The kind that festers when too many know the truth but say nothing. Whispers of offshore accounts, foreign mining deals, legal loopholes, and sellout contracts had been filtered out by design. Even Ellis, the court clerk, felt the wrongness, but lacked the courage to act. Around him, everyone played their part. Judge, press, protesters. Performing justice without its soul. Then the doors opened. When Ibrahim Traoré entered, It felt less like a man arriving and more like truth stepping into enemy territory. No guards. No entourage. Just a man with quiet dignity, wearing a simple dark suit, red folder in hand. He acknowledged no one. Returned no looks. Walked past the gallery like they didn't exist, because in that moment they didn't. The cameras searched for weakness. They found none. His face calm, unreadable, like a man who'd met death and come back silent. Rage couldn't unsettle the guilty, like this calm could. No announcement. No greeting. The judge didn't rise. The bailiff offered no seat. But Traoré didn't hesitate. He placed the folder down, sat, and the only sound was the soft click of the folder, a sound like a lock being turned. Some in the gallery shifted. Ellis looked at the folder, then at Traoré. It didn't look like evidence. It looked like judgment. The cameras, the scripts, the judge's lighting, they all flickered under a new presence. Doubt. Outside that folder, the trial hadn't begun. Inside it, the truth was already written. Judge Whitaker adjusted his robe like a man preparing for a photo op. He tapped the mic twice, unnecessarily, and began, "Mr. Traoré," drawing out the syllables like savoring a dish. "In this courtroom, we do things differently than what you may be used to." He smiled toward the gallery, nearly winking. "Here, justice isn't decided in back rooms or dusty parades. It is fair, blind, sacred." His words landed like scripted lines, searching for applause. He paused. Nothing but camera clicks. Undeterred, Whitaker went on. "You are a guest in this nation, Mr. Traoré, and you will act with respect. You may have led in your country, but here, you are no leader. You are a defendant." The word dropped heavy. "I'll teach you how justice really works," he said proudly, as if Traoré should feel honored to be lectured. But Ibrahim didn't flinch. Fingers resting on the red folder, waiting, not yet. Whitaker flipped a page for effect, though it was blank. "Let's begin," he said, glancing at the court reporter. "Though I suppose we'll excuse the grammar. I hear your English is functional." Scattered laughs followed. "Did you translate this yourself?" he asked mockingly, waving a paper. "Or did someone help you between goat-herding sessions?" Louder laughter now. The cameraman zoomed in on Traoré's face, hoping for shame. There was none. Whitaker stepped around the bench theatrically. "It's remarkable someone with no formal Western legal training thinks he can present anything of value here." He held up the paper again. "This isn't a village council. This isn't a storytelling circle. This is federal court." The smirk never left his face. "You may charm your way through politics back home with slogans and street speeches," the judge said. "But here we use evidence." Another wave of laughter rolled through the audience. A few reporters scribbled awkward moment in their notebooks. But still, Traoré didn't move. Not a blink. Not a twitch. Just that same hand resting on the red folder, gently, patiently. And then something shifted. Whitaker's grin faltered, just enough to reveal the thin thread of irritation beneath it. The laughter in the gallery began to die down. Not because the show was over, but because they sensed something was coming. The judge leaned in slightly, resting his elbows on the bench, not addressing the gallery now, but the man seated quietly before him. "You know," he said, voice lower now, colder. "Men like you often mistake silence for strength. But here, silence can be very dangerous." He let the silence stretch, just enough to feel heavy. "If you raise your voice again, if you so much as challenge the authority of this court, I will have you dragged out in chains, like the rest of your people." No laughter this time, only a sharp gasp from somewhere in the gallery. A camera lens twitched. A journalist slowly lowered her pen. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in an instant. The threat wasn't metaphorical. It wasn't clever. It was real, and it was racial, like the rest of your people. Even some of Whitaker's own staff looked stunned. The clerk's hands trembled. One of the bailiffs shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to look at the judge or the floor. Whitaker, perhaps realizing the line had been too raw, too revealing, tried to smirk again. But it didn't quite land this time. He straightened in his chair and cleared his throat. "Let's proceed," he muttered. But it was too late. The room was no longer laughing. It was listening. Ibrahim Traoré did not respond. He did not defend his education. He did not protest the insult. He did not even acknowledge the threat. He simply sat there, still, composed, watching. And somehow, that silence, that absolute, unshakable silence, was louder than anything else said that morning. It stretched through the courtroom like a fault line. Whitaker looked at him, waiting for a reaction, any sign that his words had landed. But Traoré gave him nothing. No anger, no fear, only stillness. The cameras sensed a shift and zoomed tighter on his expression. Reporters exchanged glances. The audience held its breath. Something had changed. It wasn't obvious, not yet. But the performance, the spectacle, had cracked. And somewhere deep beneath the marble and microphones, justice stirred from its slumber. Because when a man refuses to flinch in the face of hate, when he holds his silence like a sword, you begin to wonder, what is he waiting to say? For nearly 20 minutes, Ibrahim Traoré had not spoken a word. He had endured condescension, racist mockery, and the veiled threat of being dragged out in chains, all while sitting perfectly still. But now, without a change in expression or posture, he leaned forward, just slightly, and spoke. His voice was quiet, low, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't beg for attention, but quietly commanded it. "Your Honor," he began, his accent clear but unashamed, "you speak of justice as if you own it." The gallery froze. "You speak of law like it's pure, like it's untouched. But you forget, some of us have watched the law being sold." Silence. The judge, taken aback by the calmness of the tone, blinked. Traoré didn't stop. "I did not come here to perform. I came to answer the question you refused to ask." He paused. "What happens when a court loses its right to judge?" Whitaker shifted in his chair, trying to recover the air of dominance. "Mr. Traoré, this isn't the time for speeches." But even his tone faltered. Because something had changed. Traoré was no longer just the accused. He was the one asking questions now. "Then allow me," he said, "to show you what time it really is." And with that, he reached for the red folder. The courtroom watched as Traoré opened the slim folder with precise, deliberate care. There was nothing flashy in the motion, no dramatic flourish. But the sound of the folder landing on the polished wood desk, a soft, clean thud, made people flinch. It was the sound of something inevitable. Traoré lifted the first page and turned it toward the judge, then gently placed it on the bench. Then the second page. Then the third. No rush. Each document laid down like a piece of evidence at a crime scene. And, in a way, it was. The judge looked down, trying to maintain composure. But the tightness in his jaw gave him away. He reached for the pages slowly, casually, as if nothing inside them could possibly matter. But when his eyes hit the top of page 4, something cracked. What the cameras couldn't see, but what everyone in the room felt, was the precise moment Judge Whitaker's breathing changed. His lips pressed together. His hand hovered near his chest. His forehead tightened. The confidence didn't collapse all at once. It frayed, second by second, as his eyes moved line by line down a document he had not expected anyone to possess. Traoré said nothing. He simply waited. And as the judge reached the final line, the one with his name, the shell company address, and the foreign transaction ID number that couldn't be explained away, he stopped blinking. At first, Whitaker forced a smirk. "Is this supposed to be threatening?" he asked, lifting the paper with trembling fingers. "Anyone with an internet connection can mock up fake bank records." His voice was louder now, but not stronger. It wavered, like a man trying to convince himself of a lie in front of a mirror. "This is nonsense. Manufactured. A stunt." He laughed, louder this time, but it didn't land. It was hollow, desperate, too sharp, like a man choking on confidence that had already turned to dust. He turned to the clerk. "Verify these. Immediately. This court does not entertain foreign propaganda." But the clerk didn't move. Instead, the young man glanced at Traoré, then back to the judge, and took a small, nervous step backward. Traoré calmly added, "You'll find the original documents were submitted to your Office of Ethics 2 hours ago, along with matching wire transfers from Onyx Global to the account listed under your son-in-law's name in the British Virgin Islands." He let that hang in the air, then added, "There's a second folder. Sealed. Delivered to the International Criminal Court. This one's just for show." The judge opened his mouth, but said nothing, because now even he could feel it. The walls were closing in. It started small. A woman in the third row raised her phone, not sneakily, but boldly. A journalist stepped into the aisle, notepad forgotten, camera raised. The bailiff didn't react. He was staring at the judge. The courtroom, once primed to watch a man fall, was now watching something else entirely. A man unravel. Whitaker's hand reached for the gavel,